22. The madwoman climbed the endless stairs that took her to the choking room that contained one single inhabitant, the notorious mystagogue of whom all Arkham had been whispering. They who had witnessed the disturbing exhibition spoke of it with fear clouding their uneasy eyes. And as she contemplated the troubled murmurings of the crowd, the madwoman heard a buzzing of recollection within her cracked skull. For she had once been a professor of esoteric poetry at Miskatonic University, where she had dwelt on the fantastic poets such as Justin Jeffrey, Clark Ashton Smith, and Edward Pickman Derby, seers who had also spoken of fantastic things. The intriguing rumours shared among Arkham folk were very similar to the themes evoked in the poetry of those bards, whose books she had managed to hold on to when madness had cost her the position at the college and forced her into a homeless existence, in which her nights were spent in a shelter beneath the steeple of an ancient church. Curiosity had been pricked, and it was always charming to locate a new hovel in which to hide during daylight. And so she climbed endless stairs that took her to a little room in which a tall, gaunt woman of exotic beauty stood, a creature whose burnished hair of deepest red fell below her back. The eccentric wretch liked the warmth of the modest room, and she cherished its cosy silence, which served as contrast to the obnoxious world of men. She enjoyed looking at the enchanting woman whose gown of yellow silk clung seductively to a sensual figure, and she pondered the talisman that hung from its cord between the lady's full breasts, an amulet that depicted a faceless idol, beside which two winged figures genuflected. "Welcome," the woman spoke, as she stood before a wall-sized screen on which dream-like images prophesied of mortal doom. "Please sit here, in this chair before me, and let us commune. You have appetite, I know. Look, on that table there, a tray of sustenance from which you will win a multitude of nourishment. Yes, set your thin book on the chair next to you, and let me place this salver in your lap. Excellent." The lunatic marvelled at the sight of the tray and its contents, for she had never seen anything like the 7 iridescent apples of peculiar blush, and when she took one spherical object in hand and chomped into it, she was overwhelmed with awe at the taste that spilled into her mouth as the choked room darkened. She bit into the flesh again, as images began to move upon the walls, circulating pictures that coalesced into one single representation of an alien tree on which 7 prismatic globes of fruit hung on writhing limbs before a backdrop of absolute obscurity. The quiet little room became haunted by a subtle song of windstorm that might have issued from far galaxies, a tempest that took on potency and attacked the tree, the substance of which deteriorated as scattered dust, although its 7 spheres remained aloft in nothingness, which they enhanced with sudden brilliance that burst from them as cosmic sparks. And then they too were caught within the cyclone, and spinning they became a vortex of extraterrestrial tint, a spiralling pandemonium into which a madwoman might be sucked. And so she was, drawn into a non-dimension that was awash with streams of violet illumination that glittered with the golden wreckage of 7 dying suns. Yet she was not alone, for the magnificent black woman stood beside her as escort, and took her melting hand as she transformed into a perishing bubble without form or place. Yet still some semblance of paltry human psyche remained extant, as mercury that spilled from black inhuman palm and leaked into another realm, where it frolicked before the features of demoniac camouflage that clothed ultimate chaos, and danced to the playing of cracked flutes held in monstrous claw. Ah, glorious! The idiotic wail of that which transcends time, the fury without form or meaning, around which the transformed lunatic whirled as eternal advocate. "That's a wondrous book," The sepulchral voice awakened the unfortunate one from dream's dimension. "Yes, I used to teach it at university," the madwoman replied as she placed a protective hand over the book. She laughed scornfully as memory emerged. "I had to pretend that it was symbolic, but my dreams had informed me otherwise, as only they can. The poet Derby was in fact a furtive campaigner of dark and secret things, unknown to the plebeians who savoured his lyrical aptitude alone, which they heightened because of his youth. Potent visionaries, the young. His art was a seductive force, as you are, and to sing his lines is to enter into an intimate relationship with sorcery." She took up the volume, kissed it and pressed it to her bosom, from which her heartbeat sounded as a delicate throbbing in the gloom. She opened the book and peered at what she could make of the yellowed page, but she did not need to see the lines, for they dwelt inside her unhinged mind. However, before she could begin to recite, her hostess uttered song. "I see the impish flock that moves in dance about the nameless icon so adored. Their outlines play upon a ruined manse as ghastly silhouettes of demon horde. O devil horde that spread membranous wings, that seeped from out the manse of ill repute, and flocked as nightmares brood obscene hatchlings, that move in an expression of tribute, about the nameless icon of smooth stone, their embassy of chaos absolute, a monster mundane time cannot disown, a deity dull man dare not refute." The madwoman lifted her eyes in astonishment as the other sang the syllables of printed poetry, and then she shut her eyes and spoke the final couplet. "And I, once dead, yet dreaming, now awake, and reach into rich Bedlam, and partake." The black one smiled and removed the tray from the madwoman's lap. "What are you named?" "I am Geraldine Worthington." "Ah, Geraldine. Look here, an ornamental hashish pipe from mystical Egypt. Now let me ignite it with this length of match. Let me suck. Isn't that a sweet aroma? No, don't rise. Take this in your pretty mouth, and let it transport you into a realm of delicious delirium and language. Heed not the sparks that flit between those incandescent suns. Ignore the cosmic storm that weaves into your hair. Suck upon that stem, and feel the coils of alchemy that curl into your skull, and then suck these lips I offer thee, and taste of untold things." Miss Worthington took the pipe and placed it in her mouth, drawing on the wooden stem so that airy nectar seeped into her mouth as cloud that floated to and claimed her brain, which hatched with vision. Smiling idiotically, she pressed her mouth to the others and drank the elixir that was siphoned through her lips, that intoxicating lava. The 7 suns turned above her head and sank into her eyes, with which she found new revelation. Her mortal essence moved through antediluvian forest until, at last, she stood before an obsidian obelisk that tilted over the obscene rubbery fiends that pranced around it. Some distance behind the black pylon stood a ruined manse, through which a chill wind played through cracks and fissures, wailing as freakish intonation to which the dog things danced. The madwoman ached to ape the dancing of the brood, one of which held horrid nourishment to its mouth, and she felt a tinge of unfathomable exhilaration as the ghouls raised obscene paws to the enormous moon, whereon shifting clouds formed 1,000 faces. She watched the terrible beams of that lifeless sphere of lunar dust fall onto inhuman physiognomies, which it seemed to bleach and blur with reconstruction. And when those reformed visages turned to her, the madwoman recognized them as the poets with whom she had been intellectually intimate. Wafting to them through shimmering ether, she took hold of hands and joined in their dance, shouting with them to the forlorn moon. At last, exhausted, they ceased their movement, and she turned to the Frenchman's severe face, the stormy eyes of which she kissed. Noticing the bit of infant's brain that blemished the perfection of his mouth, she plucked it from him and held it to soft light. The poet smiled as he took it from her grasp and placed it below his nostrils, and he closed his eyes as he drank its sweet bouquet, and then, smiling, he moved it to the woman's mouth and placed it on her tongue. The mystagogue stood before the obelisk and raised her countenance to moonlight, and the lunatic marvelled as she watched the black face melt into 1,000,000 more, until, at last, it utterly diminished. Raising one majestic midnight hand, the strange dark one caught residue of lightning that sparked between 7 bursting spheres, and aimed the voltage to the obelisk, the bulk of which began to split. Bat-winged brutes oozed from the cleft in stone and flowed aimlessly about the ruined mansion, as other fiends, formless and fearful, took shape in mid-air and drifted to the black enchantress, before whom they genuflected as they raised cracked flutes to formless mouths. The coruscation emitted from the shimmering spheres melded with the melting black stone and reshaped it as the idiotic lord of chaos, to whom the bat-fiends flew in adoration. Stepping to the faceless one, that triumphant avatar of ultimate pandemonium, the madwoman bowed so as to join the nebulous creatures in their adoration as their piping pierced the universe, and bending low, she pressed her mouth to dark demonic foot, the foot that, rising, contemptuously struck her mortal head. 23. My sense of wonder palpitates as I stand before the house wherein you lived when you penned your sonnet cycle, those posy dreams of alien fungi. Perhaps you were lured into the writing of your poems by Clark Ashton's sublime verse, for who could resist such influence? Or perhaps it was Melmoth's midnight apparitions that worked as aesthetic enticement. I stood before your home, wherein you dreamed of Dunwich and of Yougoth, and I placed my hand upon the 10 with which the house was numbered, and I was overwhelmed with such potent emotion, such elevated sublimity, that I have not yet come down from ecstasy. It overwhelms me now, as I work on this sequence with which I pay honour to you, my ever-muse. At times it seems impossible that you actually existed, so has my life been affected by the wondrous things you wrote. You seem mythic and remote, a muse that visits only in my memory. The world in which you lived has drifted down time's unending stream, and as I try to visualize it in the violet-misted sky, I see nothing but my own paltry era. The shimmering sun is a spectral disk within mauve heaven, a beacon that I follow down the rutted road that takes me to the isolated church, ancient and white-steepled, from which chimes no longer sound at death of day. I follow the slates until I find your name, which I whisper as I fall to bended knee. My bones shudder within their husk of wearied flesh, as tears blur your name that is etched on weathered stone, the name to which I pay homage with my art. When they sank you into your futile depth of earth, you felt a failure in all things, and sensed you would be forgotten for all time. But the old ones you awakened with your pen have never slept, and, dead yet dreaming, haunt the world anew, generation after generation. I seem to see one now, a blot within the violet-misted sky, an eidolon of chaos, crowned by walls of dead stars that it siphons from the universe, and as I gaze, its strange dark hand catches a cluster of those cosmic embers, and plants them deep within my mortal eyes. Thus aided, I behold strange towers and curious rivers, as I dance through labyrinths of wonder beneath some vault of dream. And seeing this, I ache to hold my pen and join you in eldritch song of literature. to weave the words that express my sense of wonder. And from some pocket of this dream I feel the kiss of phantom wind that carries the evening chimes that reverberate from some ancient and white-steepled edifice in a land both alien and intimate, wherein I can see the mystic mirage that is conjured by the perfection of your supernal art.